Devon Ashford was 41 years old when his ex-wife, Camille, decided that the millions he made after she left him were hers to claim. 3 years earlier, she had handed him divorce papers and walked out, telling anyone who would listen that Devon was a man without ambition, a dreamer wasting his life on cars. She took the house. She took the life they had built together. She left him with his tools, a storage unit, and an inheritance check she never bothered to track because she never believed it was real money. That was her first mistake, because Devon took that money and built Ashford Restorations from the ground up, alone, in a rented bay, working 16-hour days while she was already building a new life with someone else. By the time she showed up at his 22,000-square-foot Atlanta facility with an attorney and a legal portfolio, Devon had cleared millions in revenue and assembled a private collection of 31 rare, meticulously restored vehicles appraised at $20 million, built from parts she once stepped over without a glance. She stood inside everything he had built without her, smiled like the outcome was already decided, and told him she wanted it all. What Camille did not know was that Devon had been ready for this moment far longer than she realized, and what he had waiting for her was nothing she saw coming. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The smell hit you first. Paint thinner, leather conditioner, and something underneath both of those, something older and harder to name. The smell of metal being brought back to life, of dead things being made whole again. Devon Ashford moved the polishing cloth in slow, deliberate circles across the hood of the 1967 Shelby GT 500, his wrist rolling the same way it had 10,000 times before. The car was finished. Had been finished for 2 days, but Devon kept polishing it anyway because the work was never really about the car. It was about the silence, the stillness, the particular peace that only came when his hands were moving and his mind could finally breathe. 22,000 square feet surrounded him. The facility was a converted industrial building on the outskirts of Atlanta, high ceilings, skylights that poured clean afternoon light across the floor in wide, pale rectangles, climate-controlled to the degree, every tool on its wall mount, every supply on its labeled shelf. At the far end of the main bay, a 1970 Ferrari 365 GTB sat waiting for its final paint correction. Beside it, draped in a fitted black cover, sat a car with no name on its paperwork. A custom build. His custom build. He called it the Settlement, and he had never once considered selling it. He kept polishing. His father used to say that a broken machine never lied to you. It just needs the right hands, his father would say, crouched in the driveway of their house in southwest Atlanta, knuckles dark with grease, some neighbor's engine spread open in front of him like a confession. Everything it needs is already in there. You just have to listen for it. Devon had been listening his whole life. He met Camille at 27 at a birthday party for a mutual friend. She was sharp and beautiful and certain about everything, the way some people are when they have never once had a reason to doubt themselves. She said she believed in him. She said it often in the early years, with the kind of ease that made him think she meant it. He was 28 when they married. By 30, the shape of things had already begun to shift. She wanted a house in Brookhaven. He made it happen. She wanted vacations, Cancun, Puerto Rico, a long weekend in New York every other winter. He stretched his distributor's salary until it was nearly transparent, and made those happen too. She wanted a version of Devon that wore dress shirts to dinner parties and talked about his 5-year plan in the same breath as everyone else's. He tried to give her that version. He really did. But on weekends, and on weeknights when she was out with friends or otherwise occupied, he was in the garage, a rented bay, A storage unit packed with sourced parts and cold coffee, and the low sound of a radio station nobody else was listening to. He was building things, restoring things, practicing, quietly and without fanfare. What he had always known was his actual life. She called it a hobby. He called it his purpose. They never fought about it, not directly. It was the kind of disagreement that doesn't raise its voice. It just sits in the room with you, getting heavier every year, until the room itself can't hold the weight anymore. 2 years before the end, she stopped asking about the garage. She stopped coming home at reasonable hours. She began taking calls in the car and angling her phone away from him on the couch. She moved through their home like a woman who was already somewhere else, physically present, completely gone. Devon noticed. He always noticed everything. It was the same instinct that told him what a machine needed before he opened the hood. The ability to read a situation through its sounds and silences rather than its surface. He just didn't have the full picture yet. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Irreconcilable differences. Her attorney's preparation was meticulous. The filings too clean, too fast, too complete. That kind of paperwork didn't get written in a week. That kind of paperwork was written by someone who had been thinking about it for a long time. Devon signed. He gave her the house in Brookhaven, the furniture, the joint accounts. He kept his tools. He kept the old van. He kept a storage unit full of car parts she had stepped over without a second glance for the better part of 3 years. And he kept $52,000 sitting in a personal account she had never once asked about. Money his father had left him, held quietly in a place she had never thought to look, because she had never thought it mattered. She had been right about one thing. It wasn't real money yet. His phone buzzed against the workbench. He glanced at the screen. Rod. He picked up. Dev. His brother's voice was flat in the way it got, when Rod was working hard to sound casual. You hear anything lately? About Camille? Devon kept the cloth moving. No. What is it? She's been asking around, church folk, some of the old mutual people, asking what you've been up to, what the business looks like, how it's doing. A pause. Real, specific questions. Devon stopped polishing. He set the cloth down on the workbench beside him, smoothing it flat with 2 fingers. He stood still for a moment and looked across the bay, at the Shelby, at the Ferrari, at the covered shape of the settlement, waiting in the far corner like a patient fact. He was not surprised, not even a little. I know, Devon said. I'll handle it. Devon's office was small on purpose. He could have built it bigger. When they converted the industrial space, Zara had sketched out a floor plan with a corner office that ran almost 400 square feet, glass walls, a view of the entire main bay, the kind of room that announced itself. Devon had looked at the sketch for about 3 seconds and cut the office down to 120. A desk, a filing cabinet, 2 chairs for visitors, a window that faced the parking lot instead of the floor, because he didn't need to watch the work from a distance. He was always in it. Friday mornings, though, he sat at the desk. It was a ritual as fixed as anything else in his life. Before the facility opened, before Zara arrived, before the compressors kicked on, and the day started breathing, Devon sat alone with a cup of black coffee and the financials. Every line, every account, every number given its proper attention, the way a machine deserved proper attention, because a business you didn't look at closely was a business you didn't actually control. He opened the folder. He read. The beginning was a single car, a 1969 Dodge Charger, mostly disassembled, sourced through 3 different parts contacts over the last quiet year of the marriage. He had stored the components in the back of his storage unit, wrapped in moving blankets, while Camille walked past the unit's roll-up door and never once asked what was inside. The day after the divorce was finalized, Devon moved the parts into a rented bay and started working. He worked 16 hours a day, sometimes more. The bay was cold in the mornings and airless in the afternoons, and the fluorescent light above his workbench buzzed with a frequency that burrowed into your skull after the 4th or 5th hour. He didn't care. He ate sandwiches standing up. He slept 6 hours and came back. He poured the $52,000 into that car, the way a man pours everything he has left, into the only thing he still believes in, completely, without hesitation, without a safety net. He sold the Charger to a collector in Houston 7 months after he started. $214,000. Wired clean. Devon sat in his car in the parking lot of the rented bay for about 10 minutes after the confirmation came through. He looked at the number. He thought about his father in that driveway in southwest Atlanta, hands dark with grease, talking about what a broken machine needed. Then, he reinvested every dollar and got back to work. By month 6, 3 sales. Combined revenue, $680,000. By month 12, he had a business entity, Ashford Restorations, LLC, incorporated in the state of Georgia on a Thursday afternoon. A leased facility twice the size of the rented bay, and 1 employee. Zara Ose had walked into his job interview with a business degree, 3 years of automotive industry experience, and the particular energy of a person who had already decided they weren't going to be impressed by much. She'd looked at the facility, looked at Devon, looked at the 2 completed vehicles waiting for delivery, and asked him one question before he could ask her anything. "What are you trying to build?" Devon had told her exactly what he was trying to build. She had named her salary. He had met it, barely, and she had shaken his hand and shown up the next Monday like she'd always worked there. By month 18, the reputation in collector circles had spread the way Devon always knew it would, not through advertising or self-promotion, but through the work itself. One satisfied collector told another. A finished vehicle appeared at a private showcase in Charleston and got photographed and talked about. A dealer in Nashville called Devon directly after hearing his name from 2 separate sources. Revenue at month 18, $4.2 million. Devon had read that number on a Friday morning just like this one, and felt something settle in his chest. Not pride exactly, something quieter than pride. A kind of recognition. Like finally seeing your own face clearly after a long time spent looking in a fogged-up mirror. The collection had started the same way everything else started. Deliberately, and with intention. He bought the first vehicle the week the business cleared its first million in revenue. A 1966 Jaguar E-Type in British Racing Green, sourced through a private seller in Birmingham. He paid cash. He drove it back to Atlanta himself, windows down, no radio. After that, each acquisition marked something. A milestone. A chapter in what he had come to think of as his actual life. The one that started the day he signed those divorce papers and kept every single tool. A 1971 Chevelle SS. A 1958 Mercedes 300 SL Roadster tracked down through a private estate sale in Savannah. A 1957 Porsche 356 Speedster that took 8 months to find and cost $1.1 million, the largest check he had ever written, signed without a single moment of doubt. 31 vehicles total. He closed the financials folder and set it on the desk. He picked up his coffee, finished it, and set the mug beside the folder. Then he stood, walked out of the office, and moved down the corridor that connected the main bay to the private wing. The overhead lights came on automatically as he stepped inside. 31 cars, stretched the length of the room in 2 long rows, each one cleaned and covered, and exactly where it belonged. The appraised value, as of 60 days ago, was $20 million. Devon walked slowly down the center aisle. He looked at each car as he passed, not inspecting, just acknowledging. The way you acknowledge something that cost you everything and gave back more. At the far end of the wing, the settlement waited, jet black. immaculate. Built from parts Camille had stepped over in the garage without a second glance. Devon stopped in front of it. He stood there in the quiet, in the clean light, in the space he had built from a storage unit and a rented bay, and $52,000 she had never thought to look for. He knew she was circling. He was not afraid. The new acquisition was a 1963 Aston Martin DB5, silver gray, sourced through a private seller in Savannah, who hadn't fully understood what he had. Devon had driven down on Saturday, looked it over for 40 minutes without saying much, and written the check before he left the man's driveway. Now it sat at the near end of the wing under temporary lighting, while Devon walked slow circles around it, making notes in a small spiral notebook he kept in his back pocket. He noted the condition of the chrome trim around the windshield, the surface rust along the rear wheel arch that would need to come off in layers, the original leather on the seats, cracked but present, which mattered. You could work with present. He was crouched beside the rear quarter panel, writing, when Zara appeared in the doorway. She had her arms crossed. Her voice was exactly level. Not flat, level, the way a surface is level when someone has taken care to make it so. "There's a woman out front," she said. "She has a man with her. He's carrying a portfolio." Devon didn't look up right away. He finished the note he was writing. He capped the pen, slid it back into the notebook, and stood. He looked at Zara. She looked at him. Her expression said everything her words hadn't. "Okay," he said. He tucked the notebook into his back pocket and walked out of the wing. Camille was standing in the center of the main bay. She was dressed the way she always dressed when she wanted to be taken seriously. Sharp blazer, heels that were practical but not quite flat, hair pulled back clean. She was looking at the facility with an expression she was working hard to keep casual. It wasn't quite working. Her eyes moved too deliberately, pausing on the equipment, the finished vehicles on the floor, the skylights above. She was doing math. Devon could see her doing it. The man beside her was mid-40s, dark suit, leather portfolio tucked under one arm like a prop. He had the particular stillness of someone who spent most of his professional life in rooms where other people were uncomfortable. Camille saw Devon come around the corner, and her expression shifted into something warmer, practiced, the kind of warm that had a purpose underneath it. "Devon," she said. "Camille," he said. The attorney introduced himself. Devon shook his hand. He did not invite them to sit down because there was nowhere in the main bay to sit, and he did not offer to find somewhere. The attorney opened the portfolio. He used phrases like marital contribution period and commingled intellectual capital and post-decree equitable adjustment. He spoke at a measured pace, the way people speak when they want you to feel the weight of what they're saying. The core of it was this: Camille had reason to believe that certain assets currently in Devon's possession, specifically components of the business and elements of his personal collection, had been seeded, directly or indirectly, by resources that were marital in nature. Contacts developed during the marriage, knowledge acquired during the marriage, time and support that a spouse provides, even informally. She intended to file a motion for post-decree asset division. She was presenting this to him today as a professional courtesy. He used the words professional courtesy without any visible irony. Devon listened to all of it without interrupting. He stood with his hands loose at his sides and his face still, and he listened the way he listened to everything, completely, without giving anything back. While the attorney talked, Devon looked at the bay. He looked at the 1967 Shelby GT500 on the lift to his left, the 1970 Ferrari 365 GTB sitting on the floor 12 feet behind where Camille was standing, close enough that she could have reached out and touched it. He thought about the 31 cars in the wing behind him. He thought about $20 million, appraised 60 days ago, built from nothing she had ever touched. He thought about the Charger, the rented bay, The buzzing fluorescent light at 4 in the morning. He thought about sandwiches eaten standing up and 6 hours of sleep, and the cold that came in under the bay door in January. He thought about $52,000 she had never once asked about, because she had already decided it wasn't real money. He thought about all of it. He didn't say any of it. Camille was looking at him the way people look at something they have already decided belongs to them. There was something underneath the practiced warmth now, something that wanted him to react, to get loud, to give her a version of this moment she already knew how to handle. He looked at her. She had no idea what he had done in the 3 years since she handed him those papers. She had been watching the numbers from a distance. She had not seen the work. The attorney finished. The portfolio closed. Devon let a beat pass. Just one. "Okay," he said. He walked them to the front door himself. He opened it. He thanked the attorney for coming. He told Camille it was good to see her. His voice was even, and his face was calm, and he meant none of the pleasant parts and all of the calm. He watched their car back out of the lot. He took his phone from his pocket and pulled up a contact. Brianna answered on the second ring. "She came today," Devon said. Her attorney was with her. "Post-decree motion. I need to see you." Brianna's office was on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown, and it looked exactly like the woman who occupied it. Everything had a place. The shelves were organized by subject and then by date. The desk was clear except for what was actively being worked on, which today was a stack of folders arranged in a precise row across the surface. Devon's corporate filings, his bank records, his original business entity documents, his first 4 sales contracts, all of it pulled and organized before he had even walked through the door. She was on the phone when her assistant showed Devon in. She held up one finger, finished the call in under 30 seconds, and hung up without a goodbye. "Sit," she said. He sat. She opened the first folder without preamble. That was one of the things Devon appreciated about Brianna. She didn't warm a room up. She didn't spend 3 minutes telling you how she felt about your situation before getting to the situation. She got to the situation. "Her legal theory is narrow," Brianna said. "I want you to understand that first. This is not a strong claim." She turned the folder to face him and tapped a line near the top of the document. But narrow is not the same as baseless. If she can demonstrate that marital assets, money, contacts, shared resources, were used to seed what became Ashford Restorations, a court could potentially hear an argument for post-decree equitable division. The window for that argument is almost closed. Almost. She pulled a second folder on top of the first. Her attorney knows this. That's why they came to you directly. They want to see if you'll settle before we get in front of a judge, and the math gets done in public. Devon nodded. He had understood most of this before he sat down. He had spent the drive from the facility turning the legal logic over in his head, looking for the joints in it. "The money I used to start the business," he said. "The $52,000, it wasn't in a joint account." Brianna looked up. "It was a separate account," Devon said. "Personal. I opened it before the marriage. It held an inheritance from my father. Money he left me when he passed." He paused. "It was never combined with anything Camille and I shared. I paid taxes on it separately. It never touched a joint account. Not once in 12 years. Brianna was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone recalculating. "Devon." Her voice was measured, but something had shifted underneath it. Why wasn't this disclosed in the original proceedings? Her attorneys never asked about assets I came in with. They were looking for what I owed, not what I owned. They wanted the house appraised. They wanted the retirement account balance. They went after the things that were visible. He leaned forward slightly. The inheritance account had $4,300 in it when I started the marriage. It didn't look like anything worth chasing. Brianna pulled her legal pad closer and wrote something. Then she looked up at him again. "Do you have the original account documentation? Premarital opening date, contribution history, the inheritance deposit, all of it? I can have it to you by tomorrow morning." She wrote something else. She was already building. Devon could see it. Not just a defense, but an architecture. The kind of structure you don't just walk away from. The kind that settles things permanently. "She has nothing," Brianna said. "I know," Devon said. "But I want to understand something." He kept his voice even. "Who told her it was worth trying? Someone gave her this idea. Someone looked at my business from the outside, ran a number, and told Camille she had a case worth filing." He watched Brianna's face. "That didn't come from nowhere." Brianna was still for a moment. She uncapped her pen again. "You think she had counsel before today?" "I think someone was advising her well before her attorney showed up at my facility. The way that portfolio was organized, the specific language her attorney used, commingled intellectual capital. That's not language Camille came up with on her own. Someone coached her, someone who knew enough about my business to make the argument feel credible." Brianna set the pen down. She looked at Devon with the controlled attention she gave to problems she found genuinely interesting. "That's a different question than the legal defense," she said. "I know," Devon said. "But I want the answer anyway." She held his gaze for one beat. Then she reached across the desk and pulled a third folder from the bottom of the stack. Older documents, pre-divorce filings, discovery records from the original proceedings. "Give me the inheritance account documents tomorrow," she said, "and I'll start pulling the other thread." Devon stood. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at the row of folders on her desk. His life, documented and organized by a woman who understood exactly what it meant to fight for something you built yourself. "Thank you, Brianna." "Don't thank me yet," she said, and was already reading. Devon walked out of her office with one thing on his mind. Not the motion. Not the legal filing. Not the $20 million. He wanted to know how deep it went. The showcase was held in a converted warehouse space just off Broadway in Nashville. The kind of building that had been something industrial once and was now something expensive. High ceilings. Exposed steel. Track lighting pointed down at 32 vehicles arranged in 2 long rows, each one cleaned to within an inch of its life and tagged with a small placard listing provenance, restoration notes, and the asking price. Devon arrived at 9 in the morning, 2 hours before the floor opened to buyers. He didn't want to be there. Not because of the showcase. He respected the event and most of the people in it, but because his mind was still back in Brianna's office, still turning over the question he had left her with. Someone had coached Camille. Someone had looked at Devon's numbers from the outside and decided the math was worth pursuing. He had been sitting with that fact for 3 days, and it had not gotten smaller. But business did not stop because his personal life was afire. It never had. That was one of the things Camille had never understood about him. That the work wasn't something he did when everything else was settled. The work was the constant. Everything else moved around it. He shook 4 hands before he reached the registration table. He spent 90 minutes on the floor, looked hard at a 1963 Buick Riviera that had been restored with more money than skill, said polite things about it to the man selling it, and moved on. He had 2 real conversations about 2 real vehicles. He took photographs and made notes in the small leather notebook he carried to every showcase. He was pouring a cup of coffee near the back of the room when Frank Pelham found him. Frank was somewhere in his mid-60s, built wide and soft in the middle, with a white beard trimmed close and eyes that had spent 40 years looking at cars and deciding what they were really worth. He ran a dealership out of Knoxville that catered to old money collectors, and he had bought 2 cars from Devon in the last 18 months, both times without negotiating. A man who didn't negotiate was a man who understood value. "Got a minute?" Frank said. Devon read his face. Frank's voice had the particular flatness of someone who had been waiting to say something. "Sure," Devon said. They moved to the far corner of the room, away from the clusters of buyers and the low recorded music being piped in from somewhere above. Frank crossed his arms. He looked at Devon the way a man looks at someone when he's not sure how much damage the next sentence is going to do. "About 6 months ago," Frank said, "I got a call at the office. Woman said she was your business partner, said she'd been working with you from the beginning, and was helping you manage some of the administrative side of things." He paused. "She asked specific questions, not casual questions. She wanted to know about your inventory value, what your quarterly margins looked like, what I thought your total revenue had been over the last year." Frank's jaw tightened slightly. She had a smooth way of asking. Didn't feel like an interrogation, but looking back, it was. Devon held his coffee cup and did not move. "I figured you'd sent her," Frank said. "That's the only reason I talked as much as I did. I didn't give her exact numbers. I didn't have exact numbers. But I gave her a picture. A pretty clear one." He looked uncomfortable now. "I should have called you to confirm. I didn't. I'm telling you now because I saw your face when you walked in this morning, and I've known you long enough to know when something's wrong." Devon set the coffee down on the table beside him. "What did she sound like?" he said. "Polished, friendly, the kind of friendly that's doing a job." "Her name?" Frank thought about it. "Said it was Camille, I think. Camille Ashford." Devon asked him to describe her anyway. Frank did. Precise, unhurried. Devon listened to the description of the woman he had been married to for 12 years and felt something go completely flat inside him. Not surprise, not rage, something colder and quieter than both. "Frank," Devon said, "I need you to be willing to put that in writing." Frank looked at him steadily. "Already figured you'd ask that." "Yes." Devon shook his hand. He spent another hour on the floor because leaving early would have meant something had rattled him, and nothing had rattled him. He said his goodbyes, picked up a business card he'd been meaning to collect, and walked to his truck. The drive from Nashville back to Atlanta was 3.5 hours. Devon made it in silence. No music, no calls. He drove with both hands on the wheel and let the highway move underneath him and thought about Camille calling Frank Pelham's office, thought about her smooth voice asking sharp questions, thought about the picture she had been building, quietly and methodically, while the divorce paperwork was still being processed. She hadn't been grieving the marriage. She had been assessing it, calculating what it might still be worth. He pulled into the facility at 8:30. The lot was empty. The lights inside were on their overnight setting, low and amber through the windows. He sat in the car and called Rod. Rod picked up on the second ring. Devon told him everything Frank had said, start to finish, without editorializing. Rod listened without interrupting, which was not something he did often. When Devon finished, Rod said, "She was waiting for the right number." Devon looked at the building in front of him. His building. "She got it wrong," he said. Devon didn't sleep well. He was in bed by 10 and awake by 1, staring at the ceiling with the particular alertness of a man whose mind had refused to stop working. He lay there for 20 minutes, then got up, made coffee, and went to the closet shelf where he kept the manila folder, the divorce paperwork. He hadn't looked at it in over a year. He didn't need to. He knew what was in it. But what he needed now wasn't the content. It was the dates. He spread it across the kitchen table in the gray quiet of early morning. The filing date, the response windows, the finalization stamp. He set his phone beside it and opened his calendar, going back 3 years, scrolling slow. Then he opened his text messages and went further. It took him 11 minutes to find what he was looking for. The exchange was still there, sitting in a thread that had gone cold long before the divorce made it official. He had texted Camille on a Thursday afternoon. He remembered the day clearly now that he was looking at the proof of it. He had been in the rented bay, hands still dark with grease, so excited he hadn't even wiped them before picking up his phone. Got a serious buyer for the Charger. Houston collector. He's offering $200K. Might go higher. He had put a period at the end, but he had felt an exclamation point. He had felt 10 of them. Camille's response came 47 minutes later. "That's great. Don't forget we have dinner at the Suttons Saturday." That was it. No follow-up. No question about what it meant for the business, for the future, for the thing he had been trying to build for years, while she called it a hobby. Dinner at the Suttons on Saturday. Devon set the phone down on the table. He looked at the filing date on the divorce paperwork. He counted the days forward from the text. 22 days. Her attorney had filed 22 days after he told her about the charger. He sat with that for a while. The coffee went lukewarm. He didn't touch it. He called Darren and Willa Sutton at 9:30 that morning and kept his voice easy. They were good people, both of them. Darren ran a landscaping company, Willa taught elementary school, and they had been the kind of couple you went to dinner with on Saturdays and talked about nothing important and felt better for it. Devon hadn't seen them much since the divorce. That was how those things went. They met at a diner in Decatur at 11. Willa hugged him at the door. Darren shook his hand with both of his, the way men do when they're genuinely glad to see someone. They ordered. They talked about Darren's business, about Willa's classroom, about the Atlanta traffic, and the construction on I-285 that had been going on so long it had become a permanent feature of the city. Devon listened and asked questions and let the conversation find its own current. After the food came, Willa asked, "You heard anything from Camille?" Devon said he hadn't. Not recently. He asked how she was doing. "She seems okay," Willa said. She picked up her fork, set it back down. She was the kind of woman who thought out loud without realizing it. "She's been with somebody for a while now. Real estate developer. Patrick somebody. They met at a conference, I think she said." Willa looked at Darren briefly, the way couples do when they're checking whether they're sharing too much. Darren looked at his plate. "That's good," Devon said. His voice was level. "She's been with him a good while," Willa added. 3 years, maybe? More than 3? She said it the way people say things they haven't examined. Casually, without understanding the shape of what they're handing over. Devon took a sip of water. "Good for her," he said. He steered the conversation somewhere else and let it go. He drove home from Decatur in the same silence he had driven back from Nashville in. But it was a different kind of silence now. Nashville had been the silence of a man absorbing a fact. This was the silence of a man who had finished assembling something and could finally see the whole picture. 3 years. More than 3. The marriage had still been intact when she met Patrick. He could do that math in his sleep. Camille hadn't left because Devon lacked ambition. She had left precisely because the ambition had finally shown itself in one text message on a Thursday afternoon. $200,000 and a Houston collector. And she had made her decision inside of 3 weeks. Exit the marriage clean. Take a fast settlement before the numbers got complicated. Go somewhere else. She hadn't given up on Devon. She had cashed out. Devon pulled into his driveway and sat in the car for a moment with the engine idling. He thought about the charger. He thought about 22 days. He thought about the dinner at the Suttons that Saturday, which they had attended, and how Camille had passed the bread and refilled her wine glass and said nothing about the buyer in Houston. He picked up his phone and called Brianna. She answered on the first ring. "Start building the counterfiling," Devon said. "I'll be at your office tomorrow morning with everything." The box sat on Devon's passenger seat. A shoebox, really, repurposed and taped shut. Inside, a silver bracelet Camille had texted about twice, a small framed photo from her mother's 70th birthday party, and a ceramic bird figurine that had lived on the windowsill above their kitchen sink for most of the marriage. Small things, the kind of things that accumulate in a life, and then become negotiating points when that life ends. Devon had texted Patrice the night before, said he had a few of Camille's things he'd been meaning to get back to her, said it had been too long. Both of those things were true. Patrice had responded within 4 minutes. "Baby, come on over. I'll make coffee. You want sweet potato bread? I made some this morning." Patrice Watkins lived in a brick ranch house in Lithonia, 30 minutes east of the city, on a quiet street where the lawns were maintained and the driveways held practical cars. She had lived there for 21 years. Devon had driven this road more times than he could count during the marriage. Holidays, Sunday dinners, the occasional Saturday when Camille wanted to see her mother, and Devon had tagged along because he genuinely liked the woman. He had always genuinely liked Patrice. That was the part of this that sat uncomfortably in his chest. She was waiting at the door before he reached the porch. 63 years old, small and solid, wearing a housecoat the color of a ripe persimmon. She opened the screen door and pulled Devon into a hug that meant it. "Look at you," she said, holding his face in both hands the way she always did, studying him like she was reading something. "You look good, Devon. You look like you're doing good." "I am," he said. And that, too, was true. The kitchen smelled like coffee and brown sugar. The sweet potato bread was already sliced on a plate at the table. Devon set the shoebox on the counter and sat down, and Patrice poured 2 mugs without asking how he took his, because she already knew. They talked easily. That had never been difficult between them. Patrice asked about the business. She had seen the magazine article, had shown it to her church friends, was visibly proud in a way that had nothing to do with Camille, and everything to do with the years she had watched Devon work quietly and without recognition. "I always told her," Patrice said, setting her mug down. "I said that man is going to build something. I said it." Devon smiled. He broke off a piece of the bread. He let her talk. He asked about her garden. She had always kept one. Tomatoes, mostly. He asked about her church, about her sister in Birmingham, about the neighbor whose dog dug up her flower beds every spring. He listened the way he had always listened, completely, without interruption, giving people the full weight of his attention until they felt entirely comfortable. Eventually, in the natural drift of conversation, the way one topic always flows into the next when 2 people are relaxed, Patrice said, "Camille's doing okay. I know you probably wondered." "I'm glad to hear it," Devon said. "She's still with Patrick." Patrice wrapped both hands around her mug. "Real estate. Nice man. I've met him twice." She paused, and something flickered across her face. Not quite doubt, but a small hesitation, like she was working out how much to share. Then, because she was Patrice, and she had never quite learned to stop at the edge of a thought, he actually proposed to her 6 months ago. Devon looked up from the bread. His expression didn't change. "Is that right?" he said. Not a question, just a door left open. She didn't say yes. Patrice frowned slightly, turning her mug in her hands, which I did not understand. I did not understand that at all. She said her attorney. Her attorney, Devon, can you imagine? She said her attorney told her to wait. Something about a legal matter she had going. Said it would be better to wait until it was finished before she went and got married again. Patrice shook her head, with the mild exasperation of a woman who loved her daughter, and frequently did not understand her. "I said, Camille, that man proposed. You don't put a good man on hold over paperwork." She looked at Devon. "You know how she is, though. Once she's decided something, she's decided it." Devon nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I know how she is." He picked up his coffee. His hand was steady. His face was calm. Somewhere behind his eyes, the last piece of it dropped into place with the quiet finality of a lock closing. She had not turned Patrick down. She had simply made Devon pay for the ring first. His business, his collection, $20 million assembled from parts she had once stepped over without looking down. She had planned to take it, satisfy whatever financial requirement Patrick's prenuptial demanded, and then go back and say yes. Devon was never the chapter she was returning to. He was just the page she needed to get through before she could turn it. He finished his coffee. He ate the last of his bread. He talked with Patrice for another 10 minutes about her tomatoes and the dog next door, and nothing that mattered at all. Then he stood, thanked her for the coffee, and hugged her at the door. He carried the shoebox back to his car. He set it on the passenger seat. He sat behind the wheel for a long moment, looking at nothing in particular through the windshield. Then he started the engine and drove directly to Brianna's office. Brianna's assistant showed Devon in without making him wait. That was the thing about Brianna's office. It ran on precision. Every appointment started on time. Every surface held exactly what it was supposed to hold, and nothing else. The shelves were organized by case type. The desk was clean, except for whatever was currently active. Today, what was currently active was Devon's file, already open, already flagged in 3 places with small yellow tabs. She looked up when he walked in and read something in his face that made her close the file and give him her full attention. "Sit down," she said. "Tell me everything." So he did. He told it in order. That was how Devon's mind worked. Not in bursts of emotion, but in sequence. One fact after the next, each one placed carefully like a tool returned to its proper place on the wall. He started with Frank Pelham, the Nashville showcase. The phone call Camille had made to Frank's office 6 months ago, presenting herself as Devon's business partner, asking about inventory value, quarterly margins, total revenue. He told Brianna that Frank had assumed Devon sent her. He told her Frank had no reason to lie and every reason to help. Brianna made a note. He moved to the divorce paperwork. The text message he had found on his old phone, the one he sent Camille 3 years ago, late on a Thursday evening, telling her he had a buyer for the Charger. He had been excited. He remembered being excited. Her response had been 4 words. "That's good, I guess." And then, exactly 22 days later, her attorney had filed. Brianna's pen stopped moving. She looked up. 22 days. 22 days, Devon said. She wrote that down too. Then he told her about Willa Sutton, about Patrick, about the conference, the timeline, the fact that Camille and Patrick had been together for over 3 years, which meant the relationship began while the marriage was still legally intact. He told her Camille had not left because he failed her. She had left when his success finally showed itself, quick enough to extract a clean settlement before the number got complicated. Brianna set her pen down and folded her hands on the desk. Then Devon told her about Patrice. He told it quietly and without editorializing. He said Camille had declined Patrick's proposal on the advice of her attorney. He said the timing was deliberate. He said she had put the engagement on hold specifically to protect her legal standing during the post-decree motion, that she had planned to file the claim, collect what she could from Devon's business and collection, use those assets to satisfy whatever Patrick's prenuptial required, and then go back and say yes. When he finished, Brianna was quiet for a moment. She postponed her own engagement, Brianna said slowly, to use your assets as a down payment on another man's proposal. That's what the evidence suggests, Devon said. Brianna picked her pen back up. Okay, she said, and the word came out the way a blade comes out of a sheath, clean and purposeful. Here's what we're going to build. She laid it out across the next 40 minutes. 4 pillars. The first, the premarital inheritance documentation. The account opened before the marriage, never commingled. A clean, unbroken paper trail from Devon's father's estate to the purchase of the Charger. Iron. The second, Frank Pelham's written statement. His testimony would confirm that Camille had been conducting a covert financial investigation into Devon's business during the divorce proceedings themselves. Not before, not after, during, which spoke directly to premeditation and bad faith. Devon pulled out his phone while Brianna was still speaking and dialed Frank's number. Frank picked up on the second ring. "Frank," Devon said, "I need to ask you something." He kept it short. Explained what he needed. Written testimony, signed, notarized if possible. Frank didn't hesitate. "Tell me where to send it," he said. Devon thanked him and hung up. Brianna was already writing. The third pillar. the time-stamped corporate formation records for Ashford restorations. Every document dated, every signature logged. The business did not exist in any form during the marriage. It was incorporated after. It grew after. It flourished after. The timeline would make that plain to anyone who read it. The fourth, a forensic financial summary. Brianna had a CPA she used for exactly this kind of work. Someone who could pull every transaction from Ashford Restoration's first dollar forward and produce a document that left no interpretive room. 0 marital funds, 0 shared resources, 0 overlap. The summary would not merely defend Devon's position. It would make Camille's entire legal theory look like a guess dressed up in a suit. Beyond the counterfiling, Devon made one additional move. He had been meaning to establish a documented trust for Rod's children for over a year. Legitimate, clean, something Rod wouldn't ask for, and Devon had been planning anyway. He told Brianna to draw it up now, properly structured, with clear timeline stamps, not to hide anything, simply to formalize what he had always intended, and to remove any ambiguity about those future equity assets before the counterfiling landed. Brianna drafted the trust language herself. She did not ask why he wanted it done today. She understood why he wanted it done today. They worked until early evening. By the time Devon stood to leave, the counterfiling was mapped completely. It was not a defense. That was the thing Camille's attorney would not expect. A defense plays from behind. What Brianna had built was a dismantling, something designed to close every exit before it was filed, so that when Camille's attorney read it, the only rational move was to stop, which was exactly what happened. Camille's attorney called Brianna's office the following morning. He did not request a formal hearing. He requested a private meeting. His voice, according to Brianna's assistant, was careful in the way that voices get when the person speaking already knows the answer and is hoping the question doesn't have to be asked out loud. Brianna called Devon to tell him. "He wants a meeting," she said. "Not a hearing. A meeting. Set it up," Devon said. He drove back to the facility as the sun was going down, the sky above Atlanta going orange and then purple at the edges. The kind of evening that felt like something finishing. He found Zara in the main bay, reviewing a client estimate at the standing desk near the tool wall. She looked up when he came in. "The meeting's scheduled," he told her. "Camille's attorney wants a sit-down. No hearing." Zara studied his face for a moment. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. She nodded once and went back to her estimate. Devon changed into his work clothes, walked to the restoration bay, and picked up where he had left off on the dashboard of the 1971 Chevelle. The grain of the wood trim was stubborn in one corner. A small, specific problem with a specific solution. He found the right tool. He got to work. The compressors hummed. The light was warm. The building was quiet in the way it got at the end of a long day, when the noise settled and what remained was just the work itself. He worked for 2 hours without stopping, focused, unhurried, at peace. Brianna's conference room was not a comfortable place to be on the wrong side of. It wasn't hostile exactly. It was just precise. The table was glass and dark steel. The chairs were expensive but not soft. The shelves along the wall held binders organized by color and year, each one labeled in the same clean typeface. No plants, no artwork, nothing decorative. Just work, organized and ready. Devon arrived 20 minutes early. He wore a dark gray shirt, pressed slacks, clean dress shoes, no tie. He had never been a man who dressed to perform. He dressed to be comfortable, while other people were not. Brianna was already there, her copy of the counterfiling stacked neatly in front of her, tabbed and ready. She glanced at Devon when he sat down and said nothing. There was nothing to say. They had done the work. Whatever happened in this room was just the last step of something already finished. Camille and her attorney arrived at 10:05. Her attorney was a compact man named Gerald Fitch, mid-40s, gray at the temples, the practiced walk of someone who charged by the hour and wanted you to feel every minute of it. He set his leather portfolio on the table and opened it before he fully sat down. Camille sat beside him. She was dressed carefully, hair done, posture straight. She looked exactly like a woman who had decided in the mirror that morning to appear unbothered. She did not look at Devon when she sat down. Then she did, just for a second. Then away. Fitch spoke first. He was smooth. Devon would give him that. He laid out Camille's position the way a man lays out cards he believes are good, with a certain practiced confidence, a slight lean forward, the implication that the other side should already be thinking about how to settle. Marital contributions, shared network. The argument that Devon's early business contacts were cultivated during the marriage using shared social capital. He used the phrase, reasonable inference, 4 times in 10 minutes. Brianna let him finish. Then she opened her copy of the counterfiling to the first tab and began. She did not raise her voice. She did not perform. She simply moved through the documentation the way water moves through a cracked foundation, quietly, completely, and with results that could not be undone. The inheritance account? Opened before the marriage, never touched by joint funds. The paper trail ran from Devon's father's estate directly to the charger purchase without a single shared dollar passing through it. Iron, she had called it. It was iron. Frank Pelham's written statement. Signed, notarized, delivered 2 days prior. She slid a copy across the table. Fitch picked it up. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. The time-stamped corporate records, Ashford restorations, incorporated after the divorce was finalized. Every founding document dated and logged. Nothing existed during the marriage. Not the entity, not the accounts, not the facility lease, and then the forensic financial summary. 41 pages produced by a CPA whose credentials Brianna cited by name. Every transaction from the first dollar forward. 0 marital funds. 0 shared resources. 0 overlap. Not a gap. Not a crack. Nothing. Fitch attempted 2 redirections. Brianna closed both in under a minute each, citing specific page numbers without looking down. By the time she finished, the portfolio in front of Fitch had not been reopened. Devon waited until the room was quiet. Then he looked at Camille. Not at Fitch, not at Brianna. Directly at Camille. And he spoke. "I know about the call to Frank Pelham," he said. His voice was level, unhurried. "I know you told him you were my business partner. I know what questions you asked him and when you asked them." Camille's jaw tightened slightly. "I know about Patrick," Devon continued. "I know when you met him. I know the marriage was still intact. I know he proposed 6 months ago, and you told him to wait." She looked at the table. "I know you told him to wait," Devon said, "because your attorney told you not to enter a new marriage until this motion resolved. You needed my collection, my business. You needed what I built, after you left, to satisfy his prenuptial requirement. You were going to use it as a down payment on a different life." The room was very still. "And I know you filed for divorce 22 days after I showed you the offer on the charger." He let that sit for a moment. "You didn't leave because I failed you, Camille. You left because you saw the success coming and you miscalculated how fast it would move. You thought you had more time." Fitch shifted in his chair. Devon didn't look at him. "Dismiss the motion today," Devon said. "Because if we go to a formal hearing, everything I just said goes into public court record. Patrick's name, the proposal, the timeline, Frank's statement, all of it. Permanent, searchable, attached to your name forever." Camille stared at him. Fitch leaned close to her ear and spoke quietly. She did not move while he spoke. She kept her eyes on Devon, searching for something, some crack in the surface, some sign that this was negotiable. There was nothing to find. She looked down. She reached for the pen. She signed the withdrawal before noon. Devon nodded once. He gathered his documents, straightened them against the table, and stood. The meeting dissolved the way all such meetings do. Slowly, then all at once. Papers exchanged. Signatures confirmed. Fitch closed his portfolio with the careful efficiency of a man who would bill for this hour regardless of how it ended. Devon shook Brianna's hand. She held it a beat longer than necessary. That was all she needed to say. He walked out. The parking garage beneath Brianna's building was cool and low-lit, the kind of space that swallowed sound. His footsteps were steady on the concrete. He didn't rush. He never rushed. He heard her behind him before she said his name. Devon. He stopped, turned around slowly. Camille stood about 10 feet back. Her attorney was not with her. The polished composure she had carried into the conference room had softened around the edges. Not broken, but tired. She looked like a woman who had been holding something heavy for a long time, and had just been told she had to keep holding it. They stood there in the dim quiet of the garage, just the two of them. "Why didn't you just let the court handle it?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but only just. "You had everything. The documents. Brianna, you would have won." Devon looked at her for a moment. "The court was never the point," he said. "Then what was?" He didn't answer that right away. He let the silence sit between them the way it had sat in that conference room, heavy and clarifying. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and I want you to actually think about it before you answer." She waited. "Did you ever actually believe in me?" His voice was quiet. No edge. No performance. Just the question, plain and direct. The way he said everything. "Not in what you thought I might eventually become. Not in some future version of me you were calculating on. Did you ever, once, just believe in me? The man who was already standing in front of you?" Camille opened her mouth. Then she closed it. She looked at him. And the silence that followed was not the silence of someone searching for the right words. It was the silence of someone who had found them and couldn't say them. The silence of a person who knew exactly what the honest answer was and understood, finally, fully, what that answer cost her. It lasted a long time. Devon watched her face. He had his answer. He nodded once, slow and final. The way you nod when something that has been uncertain for years becomes certain. Not with satisfaction, not with anger, with something quieter than both of those things. "Okay," he said. He turned and walked toward the garage exit. The Atlanta afternoon was bright and warm, and there at the curb, idling softly, sat the settlement, jet black from end to end. Long and low and immaculate. The custom restomod he had assembled from parts that once sat in cardboard boxes in a garage, Camille walked through without looking down. Parts she had stepped over on her way to somewhere else. He had gathered every one of them during the marriage, sourcing quietly, patiently, the way he did everything, and finished the build the same week the divorce papers were signed. Zara was behind the wheel. She pulled up to the curb without being asked. The way Zara did most things. She stepped out, handed Devon the keys, and looked at him with eyes that asked nothing and said everything. He got in. The engine was a low, settled rumble, the sound of something built right, built to last. He pulled out of the garage without checking the mirror. He did not look back. 18 months passed. Ashford Restorations cleared $14 million in annual revenue. The waiting list for commissioned restorations stretched 2 full years. Devon had turned down 2 acquisition offers from private equity groups, both times politely, both times finally. The collection grew to 38 vehicles. Appraised value, $26 million. Each new acquisition chosen deliberately, the way Devon chose everything. No accidents, no impulse buys, every car a chapter. He launched an apprenticeship program for young men from the West Side, the same southwest Atlanta neighborhoods where his father had fixed neighbors' cars in a driveway for 40 years. He named it after his father. The first two apprentices were 22 and 23 years old. They reminded Devon of himself at that age in ways that were sometimes hard to look at, and always worth looking at. Zara became an equity partner. The paperwork was signed on a Thursday morning. She read every page before signing, which Devon expected. She didn't say thank you, which Devon respected. She simply signed, handed the pen back, and said, "All right, let's go to work." That was Zara. Word reached Devon through Rod, always through Rod, that Patrick had ended things with Camille not long after she returned from the withdrawal meeting empty-handed. The proposal that had been waiting on the outcome of her legal strategy did not survive the outcome of her legal strategy. Rod delivered the news in a single sentence during a phone call about something else entirely, and Devon received it the same way, quietly, without celebration. He was not happy she was hurting. He was simply finished. On a Tuesday evening in late October, Devon sat on the hood of the settlement outside the facility as the sun went low and warm behind the tree line. The apprentices were still inside. He could see them through the tall bay windows, moving carefully around a '68 Mustang Fastback under the overhead lights, learning the work, respecting the work, doing it right. He had a sparkling water in one hand. He was not doing anything else, just watching. Zara came out and leaned against the car beside him, arms crossed, eyes on the same window. They stayed like that for a minute without speaking. Then she asked, "You have any regrets?" Devon took a slow drink. He looked at the building, the skylights going gold in the last of the afternoon light, the warm glow from the bay where two young men were learning something that mattered, the 38 cars sitting quiet in the private wing. The name on the side of the building. "I was always going to build this," he said. "I just needed to build it for myself." The settlement gleamed at the curb behind them, black and still and permanent. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.